Well, good morning, Houston. Welcome to the Morning Edge here on the Edge Radio Network. We are joined by the wonderful and talented Miss Nicole. How are you this morning?
I am doing very well. How about you?
I am doing well. How was your weekend?
It was nice. We enjoyed not having the storm.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, we did get some rain.
Yeah.
We did get some rain a couple of days after we were supposed to get.
Right. Yeah. Every time we have a hurricane that I have to water my lawn afterwards, I'm always a little suspect.
Just
you know, that happened with Rita before. Yeah.
Yeah, but we were thankful. We
Yes.
missed the brunt of that storm, and we are prayers and thoughts are with those in East Texas and
Sure.
Louisiana who are now having to do this
Exactly.
massive disaster cleanup.
Yeah, I will say this, and it's unfortunate because we always feel for individuals, especially like they're in Lake Charles and so on. But I've been through Lake Charles many times, and collateral damage, if that hit, let's say, New Orleans, would have been a whole different story.
No, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. I think, but in this time, we've got the pandemic, you know, those people aren't used to. Baton Rouge had a hurricane warning. Not Baton Rouge, I'm sorry.
Lake
Shreveport.
Charles. Oh, Shreveport.
Shreveport
Yeah. Mhm.
had a hurricane warning for the first time.
Really?
So we've got people who were affected that weren't
Yes.
used to this kind of thing. And
Yes,
then we've
yes.
got this pandemic in our midst. And we're asking them to now go shelter with others.
They should be right at home sheltering by now. They've had so much practice.
No, right? Right? What are we on month 79 of
That's
this
right,
year?
exactly. Like this whole year, I saw somebody say, before we get 2021, I want a preview.
I know it.
Because nobody, we were celebrating this new decade, and I had a whole thing, like right around New Year's. That's always a special time of the year, and I was telling people, some major stuff is going to go down. I just have a sense that some major stuff is going to be happening this year. And it's not just because it's an even decade. It just felt like we were in what's called a convergence. And there's an interesting thing, and this kind of will sort of parlay us into our conversation here. There are three different cycles that converged in 2020. Some of it had to do with environmental. Like they checked in about every 720 years, believe it or not, we have one of these heat ups. And we had one back in the early centuries. But there is an economic cycle. And it's not the one that most people think. The one that most people are aware of is, well, we have a bull market and a bear market. It's about every 7 years and so on, and we're destined for the market to correct itself. But I learned of a little known financial phenomenon that happens right at around every, I think they said around every 66 years.
Really?
And we have to go back to trace it because this would have been roughly the 1950s. But it's an anomaly that basically causes an economic downtown. Turn down.
Yeah.
Where did that come from?
At Monday.
It's Monday.
At Monday.
So anyway, so it's interesting because we're in that cycle right now. And the people that are desperately struggling are those disenfranchised individuals that don't have the financial wherewithal. So we've obviously seen that as an impact.
Yeah, absolutely. And, this storm, the pandemic has just magnified things. So we've had these issues that were lurking in the background right? Like you said, coming into 2020, I mean, we were working with the monster already. And
Right.
then we add this pandemic with all of these unknowns. Our kids aren't in school.
Yes.
When have you known a time where August rolls around and we're not preparing to send our kids
That's
back?
right. That's right. Yeah.
You know, that adds to people's economic woes because you've got families now having to accommodate children,
Right.
and so I don't know, like my family has had to make the decision that I'm going to be the one home because we've got minor kids and a grandchild
Wow.
at home. So it's like no place for a couple of them to go.
That's right.
So someone's got to stay home.
That's right. That's right.
And so there are economic implications to that.
But I think there's a big conversation, and my kids are now adults, but I'm sort of reflecting back to when they were younger. And there's a big conversation around this idea that when children are isolated, when they're socially isolated, when they don't have interaction with their peers, it actually affects them in really adverse ways, not just grade wise, but also emotionally and developmentally. Have you read about that or seen that?
I've experienced it. I mean, I have a 9-year-old at home, and the isolation has taken an impact on him.
Mm.
And I can tell the changes in his behavior. And I've spoken to other parents that have had similar things go on. And we can see the changes in our children as they've been taken from their social life.
Yes. Yes.
It's just, they say that what we're going through, that we're homeschooling at home or that we're working from home, it's a full out trauma center. It's nothing like a work from home environment or a homeschool environment, because at one point I wanted to homeschool my kids because I like the ability to go where their curiosity leads.
Sure.
But I didn't want to do it while the world was closed.
Yeah.
A
little duress right now. That's what's happening. There's a little pressure.
Absolutely.
My goodness. So you saw a effect on your 9-year-old. What effect were you witnessing with that?
Excuse me.
Sure, sure.
He's just a bit more withdrawn. His personality took a little bit of a hit because he didn't have the class to entertain. Mom and dad are a different audience.
Yes.
Yes. Sometimes we're playing along with the act or the skit, and then other times hey, it's time to do your work. Come on, do your chores. Make sure you take out this garbage.
Right.
But so there's our roles have had to change to accommodate their social life, and then the world is closed. We can't take them to NASA. Right. We can't take them to the zoo. Right. We can't take them to the children's museum to replace some of those activities and have them see kids. So some of my close friends and I have developed pods, essentially, where we have same age kids. Mm-hmm. And we take them to hang out with each other, to the park, rent a slide for them to, just have some activity with other kids their age, because it's necessary. And even pediatricians have chimed in to say that there's going to be a real impact on these kids if we don't get them back into school.
Oh, absolutely. Well, there were some tests back in Nuremberg, it was before that. It was during the early Nazi regime, and they were particularly ruthless when it came to human testing because, they felt like, let's say, the Jews or whomever they were using was just subhuman. But they had done some tests with identical twins, and they isolated one where there was no touch. All there was feeding, and then the other one was nurtured and taken care of. And we saw that the one that was deprived literally died. And then in another case, there was one that was about to die, and as soon as they started getting the nurturing, they came back. So it speaks to this idea that we are really designed, it's sort of inherent in our DNA that we are a social creature, And as such, when you have young people, especially in those early stages of development, that don't have the interaction, that don't have the encouragement, the fun, the peer pressure, all the different moving parts, that could really be difficult on a kid.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt. And I think that parents are experiencing it. I know with my friends with older children, they're pressing to go back. You know, they know what they're missing. They know that that's where my friends are.
Yes.
That's where my social interaction is. That's where I get to explore different parts of my personality.
Yeah.
You know, so they understand
And that's where
that
boy
it'll be a
meets
loss.
girl.
That's right.
Hey,
Oh,
look,
let's not
hey,
forget
that's a real
that
thing,
is a
especially
real
when those
thing.
hormones start raging.
A real thing. And so you've got that part that is sorely missed. And I think as adults, we can put ourselves in their shoes because I'm an empath, you know, and to that end I'm a hugger,
Yes.
right?
Mhm.
And this period has been very difficult for me because as an empath I sense people's feelings and I absorb their pain,
Mhm.
but I can't do my magic. And my magic was always to hug until we both felt better,
That's awesome. Yeah.
right? But now,
Mhm.
I can sense all of these things and I can feel all of these things and then I offer my words of encouragement and I just want to say, give me a hug.
Well, I had a situation where there's a good friend of mine, known her for 15 years, and she's a doctor, and she
Mhm.
was just very reserved about the virus, always wearing a mask and everything. And we've been around each other, I see her every week, and at some point we were saying goodbye a couple of weeks ago, and I said, "Damn it!" and I grabbed her and just hugged her. And when I did, she wasn't expecting the hug. And so it was kind of like, my spirit told me she needed that. And so I held her for a minute. And then I let her go. And she goes, "That's the first hug I have gotten since March."
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
was like, wow, you need more of them.
But but we all do, I think.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
we all do. I think
Yeah.
that's just something that we didn't know that we would miss. And like what you're saying, there is this connection and we're here for one another in
Mhm.
those ways.
Yes.
We're social beings.
Yes.
And so I think a lot of people are missing hugs they didn't know they would miss.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a chemical exchange,
Oh yeah.
that's a whole other topic. As a wellness practitioner, we can talk about the endorphins and all the different chemicals. There's something called vasopressin and oxytocin and all these different hormones that you exchange when you hug. And now we are deprived of that. And some of it is getting people agitated, angry. It's really bizarre.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
I just listened to over the weekend a sociologist, and she did some testing with rats. And she said that if you took all the rats and you socially isolated them about 2 weeks, that is equivalent to months for us.
Mm.
And when they put them all back together, the rats literally killed each other. Like they
Wow.
attacked until there was only one rat standing. And they did another experiment where they took one or two rats out of the social environment, isolated them. Those rats started going nuts. Then they put them back in with the ones that were already socialized, and those rats naturally reassimilated.
Mm. Mm.
So it speaks to this idea that we have to maintain some level of social interaction. Otherwise, societally, we start to decline.
And I think we see that a little
Yeah,
bit,
you're right.
you know. And that brings us to our topic, just where do we go beyond all of this hyper partisanship? And we saw the conventions in the past 2 weeks, but what we've seen in our streets, right? It's a political fight that is going on in our streets, and people are kind of going crazy,
Yeah.
right? this past week, I think we had an opportunity last Monday to talk about the shooting in Kenosha,
Yes.
just briefly, and the young man who was shot in the back 7 times by Kenosha police. What followed was, people protesting, and now with those protests, we've got these agitators who are out there going nuts,
Hmm.
right? Criminal, I mean, just
Yeah.
engaging in outrageous criminal activity
Yes.
in the name of righteousness.
Well, it's a twisted situation.
I'm going to say it has something to do with what you were just talking about as well, where we're all in these corners and our perspectives, we don't get an opportunity to share and be able to empathize with others' perspectives
Right.
because we're isolated. And then we've got what's going on in our mind
Right.
as our reality. And then we go out into the streets with this reality and we face what's really going on. And it's a scary thing.
Yeah. Well, the thing that I guess bothers me about politics today, it's become this zero sum game.
Oh,
You are all wrong,
oh,
I am right.
oh.
You are left, I am right. I mean, it is always diametric opposition. There's no middle ground, and the middle ground folks are ostracized for being middle. It's really a really dystopic situation. We are now in this downward spiral. Now, some can argue that, well, politics has always been sort of a dirty game.
Mm.
But truth be told, if you look back, let's go back a few generations. You look at the Reagan administration, you look at, I mean, they regarded each other with a level of respect.
Some level of respect,
Some
right?
level, yes.
Yeah. I mean, there was a level of civility where there wasn't just name calling, at
Right.
least. It didn't seem like there was a street fight going on TV.
That's right.
Because some of the things that, I hear some of our elected officials say about one another, about citizens, about, I mean, just what's going on, it's crass a
Yes.
lot of
Yes.
times. And
Yes.
so it's like there's little civility.
Yeah.
It's like my neighbors. I don't know if my neighbors are Republicans or Democrats, independents, libertarians. I don't know, what their religious beliefs are, or anything like that. But I'm not questioning that ever in real life. When
Yes.
I see them, I say good morning. If their paper is out, I put it up to the door. If their trash cans are out too long, I walk them up. It's our reality is different from what our politics suggests.
Yes.
We're not asking these questions of neighbors that need help during storms,
Right.
right? No one's going around on their boat and going, "Are you a Republican?
Yeah.
Are
Exactly.
you a Democrat?"
Right.
Either way, you can't get on the boat,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
That's not our reality. But our politics, and remember we were talking about this hyper partisan environment, it doesn't even represent the majority of us.
That's right.
We've got the disenfranchised that's represented by that nearly half of the voting age population that doesn't even show up,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And then we've got a fourth, maybe, that are the base for the Republicans, and maybe a squishy fourth on both sides,
Hmm.
right? And then we've got these people that are independents that just kind of glob on to one side or the other because that's the name of the game these days.
That's right. But there's this sad opportunism that really is discouraging because when I see the riots, starting out with George Floyd, there was some justifiable indignation. And with this current killing, there's some justifiable indignation. I'm having a hard time understanding why a cop shoots somebody that has 5 kids in their car. That had to come up in the conversation.
Yeah,
I mean, that
yeah.
guy could have been enraged as he was, and he had to say, "My children are in the car." At what point do you shoot a man when he's going into his vehicle to check on his kids? Now, of course, there's two sides to that, but it just seems very, very questionable. But since the George Floyd situation, there was justifiable indignation. But that justifiable indignation turned into political opportunism.
Yeah.
And then it just went off the rails.
Off the rails,
You've
crazy
got white kids
train.
out there with little nappy afros and black face writing Black Lives Matter.
I know.
So that clearly speaks to an agenda that's
Yeah.
beyond any concern for Black lives, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, we were talking about that a little bit last week with our guest, Mary Ann Huffman, when we were saying that politics just really doesn't belong in criminal justice and law enforcement, but it has seeped in, just like the notion of an anti-cop movement.
Mm-hmm.
It's like cops should just be held accountable. Everyone should have, um, equal justice. Everyone should have due process,
Right.
right? I mean, those should just be things. It shouldn't be a this versus that, but that's the narrative that's being sold.
Yeah.
And like the bringing up the fact we've got law enforcement in our family. You were
Sure, mine
sharing,
too. My brother, absolutely.
so we've got law enforcement in our family. I mean, I've got two big Texas Ranger cousins,
Mm-hmm.
big ones.
Yeah. Yeah.
They kind of got to be big.
Yes.
I think that's part of the qualification.
Right.
But we've got law enforcement in our family. And to say that Black Lives Matter, it's not an organization. Like I said, it's my Black life, your Black life,
Yeah.
my grandparents, my great grandparents. It's not an organization. It's about people.
Yeah.
And our politics, it leaves the people in the lurch a lot of times.
Right. But I was looking at and reading more closely sort of the mission and edicts of Black Lives Matter.
Mm.
And a lot of the language that's in the Black Lives Matter edicts has to do with gender identification, the LGBTQ community, the equity for people who are I don't remember the term, but like their sexuality is not clear. Like this
Gender
idea of
fluid.
letting a man that thinks he's a woman go into a woman's bathroom is the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. It really is.
Well, I don't know. Well, to me, I don't know if I think men go in the women's restroom and women go in the men's restroom now. I know when I'm in a squeeze, I'm
You're
just
going.
keeping it real.
Yeah.
I think that we sometimes put out fires. We start fires to put them out.
Yeah.
Because in reality, if that's the bathroom that's open
Sure.
and I gotta go,
You gotta go.
I'm going.
Yeah.
So there have been times where
That's
there
a little
has
different. If I think that I'm identifying with my feminine side and I have a penis and I'm going to walk into a woman's bathroom and stand up and pee because I think that I'm more feminine or female than male, that's problematic. And the reason I say that's problematic is because here's the problem. There are pedophiles and opportunists that will seize that to go look at little girls or perhaps identify someone they want to rape. I mean, I don't think you give people with those mental issues extra opening is all. And when I heard that, I couldn't understand it. But anytime you have a small minority, which is true, and I have no problem with individuals that are gay or alternate lifestyles, I don't have any of those issues. But when that small majority starts dictating for the rest of society what should be happening when it comes to something like a restroom, that's ridiculous to me.
but I just never knew how it became a political issue
Correct.
and a national one. Because like I said, our realities are something else.
Yeah.
There's something else. Like we try to put these laws out to self-govern when in reality if someone walked in the bathroom that wasn't supposed to be in the bathroom, our self-governing experiment, those ladies would be activated.
Yeah.
There would be some pushback because we have a self-governing experiment, and the things that our government tries to reach down and regulate, there's no way. Just like racism, there's no way that our government can regulate racism.
Sure.
There's no way that our government can stop criminality. You can make something criminal, and when they do commit a criminal act, you can arrest them and treat them as such, but you can't regulate criminality. That's something that's going on within.
Right.
So if someone wants to commit a criminal act, say putting in a law for everyone else to abide by, that person's still gonna break the law.
Yeah.
That criminal is still gonna
Mhm.
commit the criminal act. It doesn't matter how many laws are on the books. That is just more laws for them to break.
Sure.
Right. So I just, our guest today is really good for that because he's running on the Libertarian ticket. And Elliot Shearman, he's here and he's going to be coming up in a few. But really, what's good about the Libertarian Party is the fact that our government is way too big, right? It has its hand on every single thing,
Yes.
right? But as we talked about with the neoliberalism, it's not on every single thing to change the human condition per se.
Correct.
Right? It has its hand on every single thing to add to this ideology, and stripping away all of the resources from the people and giving them to these corporations to exploit.
That's right.
So I'm never in favor of more government and the government telling you where to go or me where to go, or you what to wear and me what to wear, or me what to inject and you what to. I'm never for that. So it's like when I hear if the government is to make a rule about who goes in the bathroom, I'm like, really?
That's
so you're gonna throw
problematic.
to me because I see it really, and going back to this Kenosha situation and looking at things holistically, more laws on the books are more opportunities for stops.
Yeah, mass incarceration is predicated largely on that. I guess the challenge, because I'm hearing what you're saying, I guess the challenge for me is that you're right, too many rules, too many regulations. But if you're really going back to this neoliberalism, this idea that corporations are basically constructing the rules, the challenge with that is that most companies are going to only work towards their benefit. They're going to want to pass laws. For an example, you're an oil company, so you pass environmental laws that screw the pooch when it comes to the environment, but certainly makes them more money.
Right.
So if that's the governing determinant, then we have to look at those laws and see what special interests they serve. But at the same time, I think there's something, this goes back to a biblical reference. There's something called the Epicurean philosophy. Let's eat, let's drink, for tomorrow we will die.
Yeah, yeah.
And that problem is inherent in our society. We are pleasure seekers.
That's right.
I know that we're just about out of time on this segment. So I'm gonna excuse myself,
okay,
so I can let the two political analysts talk a little bit. When you talk to Mr. Shearman, you'll have an opportunity to really discover a little bit more, folks as listeners, about the Libertarian Party and a little bit about those concepts, because they're different than a lot of people might think. So, folks, you are watching The Morning Edge, Dearly Disenfranchised, with Miss Nicole Gray, Esquire. I'm Oscar Hines. I want to thank you for tuning into this segment. I want to invite you to stay right where you are. We'll be back in just a second with Mr. Elliot Shearman. Back in a moment.
We work our whole lives to support our families. With one accident or illness, it can all be gone in an instant. Now there's a smart, affordable way to protect your family. Go to findhealthbenefits.com and discover low-cost life insurance for as little as $2 per month. Add to that a tax-deferred annuity that can help you protect your assets and grow your money for retirement. Learn more. Go to findhealthbenefits.com or call 877-235-6094. A critical illness can strike without warning and wipe out your life savings. In fact, it's the #1 reason for bankruptcy. Find Health Benefits offers an affordable solution. Get up to $50,000 if you get cancer, stroke, or a heart attack, giving you the peace of mind to focus on getting better while the plan helps you to pay your bills and medical expenses. Learn more. Go to findhealthbenefits.com or call 877-235-6094. 66% of seniors spend more time shopping for cable TV than Medicare plans. Most say because it's just too confusing. Laws change every year. The wrong plan could cost you thousands and prevent you from seeing the doctors you want. Introducing FindHealthBenefits.com. Save time, save money, see specialists without referrals. Go to FindHealthBenefits.com or call 877-235-6094 for this informative brochure.
Society is on the edge. Let's bring them back. Edge Radio, because truth still matters.
Are you a small business owner concerned about the downturn in the economy? Top business leaders like Mattress Mac and Warren Buffett will tell you that now is the time to promote your business more than ever. People need your services. Your business needs an edge. Learn about special advertising packages for small businesses right here on Edge Radio. Find out more, give us a call at 281-744-0446. That's 281-744-0446. Edge, because truth still matters.
When people stop talking to each other, society is on the edge. Let's bring them back. Edge Radio, because truth still matters.
Welcome back, you guys. You are tuned in to Dearly Disenfranchised on the Morning Edge on Edge Radio TV Network. And you guys, I have got a very special guest, Mr. Elliot Shearman, running for U.S. Congress, Texas District 2.
That's correct. Thanks for
Okay.
having me.
And I am so glad that you're able to join us today because really our topic is beyond the hyperpartisanship. We just wrapped up the Republican National Convention last week. The Democratic National Convention was the week before. And an ABC News poll showed that 50% of the voting age population didn't watch either. That says a lot.
Yeah, a lot of people have checked out from those two hyper extreme groups that more and more each day tend to resemble one another.
Yeah. We talked about this, and the reason why this show exists and the reason why I'm so passionate about engaging the disenfranchised is because the people's interests are way down low, right? We've got corporate interests, special interests, who name its interest, and then we've got the people's interests. And we put into this thing at these rates, these taxes, and all of these other things. We're taxed to know not what, but our returns are so little. How does the Libertarian Party fit into the dynamic that we have going on now?
Well, what you just mentioned, I can give you a really good recent example of that. The CARES Act that Congress passed, bipartisan, a few months ago, was trillions and trillions of dollars, and on average, the people who received a $1,200 check are going to end up paying $6,000 each in taxes on that $1,200 check. It's like a predatory loan that you don't even get a choice in the matter on.
Yeah.
So the way libertarians fit into this is we have, everyone who's affiliated with the movement has at one point in their lives said, this left and this right aren't for me. They are serving themselves. They are hypocrites. They follow policies that are only served to maintain their own power. They're not there to help the people. And it takes a little bit to overcome that because you're brought up saying there are two parties and you need to pick one. You need to fall in one of those buckets. And if you don't, well, then I guess you don't have to vote. That's fine. We like it when you don't vote because then you don't have a say either way. You just go along with the flow. Libertarians, a lot of the people I know who are within the movement have said this is wrong and we need to actually do something about it. And part of that involves getting involved in local activism. Or you can, go crazy and do what I did, run for office.
Well, that is a little crazy, right? I mean, most people, I'll speak for myself. I'm very in tune with what's going on. I want to affect change. I want to be the change I want to see. But it takes a lot of guts to throw yourself on a ballot.
It takes a little more than guts too.
Yeah.
There are a lot of hoops you need to jump through, and barriers along the way. I don't personally see this as something that I'm doing that is for me at all. I have just been dissatisfied with the options I've seen on the ballots. Not enough libertarians run so that you don't get to vote for them in every race, and it's really frustrating because you see the options that are on the ballot. If you're an informed voter, you've researched them before you're there in the voting booth, but I know a lot of people don't. And sometimes those partisan labels serve to give a general guide for what people are interested in, what they generally want. But a lot of the times you have people who are just skating in under the radar just because there's a letter next to their name.
That's right.
And they end up being completely against whatever your interests are.
Right. I mean, I've never been comfortable with a wave of any color. Mm-hmm. So, but there's lots of people that ride into very high profile positions on a wave, and that's scary to me.
Well, luckily, the last Texas legislative session changed the rule here, where they got rid of straight ticket voting.
Good.
In Texas.
I love that.
That should at least allow people to give a moment's more consideration to each race down the ballot. But again, I recommend just look up voter guides before you go. The League of Women Voters has a really good, objective, nonpartisan guide that they do, and I know that I just filled out my survey for that too, so that's available as well.
Good. I want to go back a little bit to what you were saying about libertarians being on the ballot.
Okay.
Now, we talked a little bit about something interesting offline before we came on about these major parties actively pushing libertarians and Green Party and off the ballot.
Absolutely.
So
just last week on Wednesday, the Democrats successfully removed 3 Green Party candidates from the ballot. They have been campaigning for over a year, and all that time is just yanked away from them. They can't appear on the ballot, and they did that because the deadline for removal from the ballot was last Friday. Now, since they filed on Wednesday, they had time to get that through. The Republicans tried to give the Libertarians even less opportunity to respond, so they filed on Friday morning. But since they filed so late, that case was thrown out. But the Republicans targeted 41 Libertarian candidates in Texas. And something that is interesting is they only targeted Libertarians in races where there was a Republican in the race. They didn't target any Libertarians where there was a Democrat in the race. So you have this manipulative, corrupt, partisan targeting to remove competition. And if your candidates are good, they should run on their merits. They shouldn't, you shouldn't play dirty tricks just so you can win because you haven't run against anybody. It's something that's really outrageous, and American voters should not put up with that at all.
Well, I think we were talking about these numbers in our first show, and it's worthy to bring up now. The disenfranchised represents about half of the voting age population. Pew Research data from 1976 to here, the voter turnout has been 50% plus or minus a 8% variance, and that is abysmal. We don't have enough skin in the game as the American people, and our government gets to run it on its own.
Yes, and unfortunately, the people who show up are the ones who end up dictating what happens. So one of the biggest things that I like to say in my campaign is I'm not running against a Republican, I'm not running against a Democrat, I'm running against apathy.
Yeah.
And we have this huge untapped pool of people who have a voice that aren't using it. And if you feel like the Republicans and Democrats aren't representing you, you should absolutely look at alternatives rather than sitting at home.
Absolutely. And I agree with that 100% because our self-governing experiment that we call a representative democracy needs that, because there's no way that we have the type of representation that we seek if we just stay home.
Correct.
Yeah. So we get this kind of political gaming, and a lot of people are turned off by it, and I don't blame them. I mean, because it turns me off. I'm sickened by it, but I see my vote as more of a civic duty, and I've sought out the opportunity to look for other candidates like you, Joe Jorgensen, who is running for president on the ticket.
Right.
There's another young lady, Jade Simmons, who's running as an independent. I seek out other candidates other than the major party candidates, as opposed to saying I'm going to stay home because I recognize my civic duty. But there are tons of people, because voter suppression and disenfranchisement are real, just like what you talked about, removing people from the ballot, voter suppression, disenfranchisement, all of it rolled up into one. Because if it was someone you were looking to vote for because they've been campaigning for a year and they're not going to be on the ballot, when you get there, what are you going to do?
Yeah, well, the thing is, you can't even vote for someone who might be a better alternative because the the two major parties are both colluding to do this, and they both struck within a couple of days at who they perceive as their biggest threat to their power on the ballot.
And that kind of just speaks to the political play, because it's a game between the two, and it's not really one that's above board, and we all know that. We know it's not. And we've relegated to these things that don't give any comfort, that politics isn't a purity contest. Well, of course it's not, but we don't want people playing dirty tricks.
Of course not. And,
yeah.
Something that no matter what, even if you disagree with me politically, I want you to register to vote, and I want you to research the candidates, because having your voice heard is so much more important than any individual campaign win. And getting into the habit of being an engaged voter, being someone who looks up the issues. There's a resource that I like to recommend to anybody. It's called isidewith.com.
I side with?
Correct. ISIDEWITH.com. And
okay.
You can go in there, and it's got a really extensive little, yes or no, or how much does this matter to you survey. And if you go fill that out, it will show you your own ballot based on your zip code, and then say, this is the candidate that is most aligned to you. It bypasses the media bias, it bypasses the blackouts, it bypasses the debate omissions, and lets you see, okay, this is the candidate for me.
And that's isidewith.com.
Correct.
Well, I'll certainly check it out, because I think that more tools that we have to be informed voters that's phenomenal. That helps us really get this thing to look how we want it to. And going back a little bit, when we participate, or the lack of participation, we get the government doing things to us and doing things for us. But most of us are hard workers, right? We want to take care of our families, live freely, build some wealth for our families,
exactly.
Right? But right now, those prospects seem a little slim.
Oh, absolutely. And we have a government right now that has mismanaged a pandemic situation. They've inserted themselves where they shouldn't. They've excused themselves where they should. We should be pouring resources into just giving masks to people if we're going to do anything. Instead, you have shutdowns, which totally make people, lives ruined. Business owners have watched everything they've worked hard for just be pulled out from under them, and they've lost everything. Restaurants are closing at crazy rates, and the ones that are still hanging on are they're eating all the costs and just hoping they can survive this. And that's not to say that this pandemic isn't serious, and there are absolutely serious precautions we need to take. But I think that when the government dictates what is essential and what is unessential, that's something that it just doesn't even have the right to do.
Yeah,
and
right.
I think a much more intelligent way to deal with this would be to spend pour resources into educating the population. This is what is safe to do. This is what is not safe to do. Here are masks and sanitizing equipment that you can use, and make that as available as possible. Don't hoard it up from, people can't even buy masks from Home Depot.
I know.
And they haven't for 5 months.
Yeah.
Because the government has bought all of them and is not allowing to sell them.
That's right.
So
that's right.
You have the exact opposite of what kind of a response we need. And I think that, given the amount of people who are able to help still interact safely and responsibly, you shouldn't just ban their operation of their business. You should let them figure out what's safe, what's responsible, and then operate like adults.
Yeah.
Now, one caveat I would like to say to that is, if someone is irresponsible, hold them liable.
That's right. But we have those. That's part of our self-governing experiment, and we have those checks and balances. That's why I said, if someone comes in and they're getting in my 6 feet, I've got arms and I've got a mouth, and I'm going to use it and say, hey, look, back up. Because that's how we govern ourselves. It's not, I don't need the government to put markers down on the floor to tell me if someone's in my personal space and I feel that they're, putting me in a situation where they may be jeopardizing my health. I don't need that type of instruction.
Right. And business owners don't need that either. They know they don't want to get their customers sick. They don't want to be, the reputation of being a hot zone.
That's right.
They just want to serve their customers and make their money. And there's a lot of psychology to that the government doesn't get, because it doesn't have to earn money.
That's right. Money. Yeah. But and we were talking about the CARES Act and all of the trillions of dollars that went out of the door in a matter of months. And we've already got Mnuchin talking about loan forgiveness.
Yeah, where does that come from?
What? We just gave them the loans, right? We gave them the loans, and I don't. The criteria was nothing that was where we could have had our own money and decided which businesses survived.
Yeah,
right.
They sent out $6,000 checks to everyone instead of
$1,200,
and then the other, the remaining money, just no oversight out to corporations with literally no requirements. Just here's cash, take it.
Here's cash, take it.
Had they spent the exact same amount of money and put that $6,000 in each average taxpayer's pocket, you're going to see a totally different outcome emerge.
That's right.
You're not propping up failed businesses. You don't have government cronies getting theirs, getting their slice of it's. Essentially, it's like a big just smash and grab.
It was really hard to watch, especially because I'm fiscally conservative. I've got grandkids already. So 7 of them, by the way.
I wouldn't believe that looking at you, but okay. I'll
7 of them, by the way. But so I'm really into the money. Where's it going? Why are we giving this much money to this country? Why are we?
Well, those grandchildren are going to get the bill for all this spending.
Of course. I mean, of course they are. And so when I look at these types of things and I see that amount of money going out the door, and knowing that we're creating businesses that are now going to be too big to fail, and we're going to continue to have to throw money their way, right?
You think we'd remember how all that went down just a few short years ago?
I thought so, but it was when we had these loans come out, and I started to, send out my alarm and say, wait a minute, this is way too much money. We've got to stop. There were conservatives that were telling me it's just loans, they're gonna have to pay it back. And I was like, well, did you not forget? We invested all of our resources into a small group of people.
So that whole, what you just mentioned, conservatives kind of justifying all this. This whole partisan problem kind of also boils down to, it's a team sport, and my team's got to win. And the issues seem to matter less and less.
Oh, my goodness.
In my personal race, the incumbent I'm going up against supports red flag laws and gun confiscation, which is something that Republicans would normally scream bloody murder about.
That's right.
In fact, he has the exact same position as the Democrat in my race on that. But there's like, oh, it's fine, he's the good guy.
Yeah, he's the good guy.
He was one of the co-sponsors of the CARES Act.
Wow.
And they're like, it's fine, he's the good guy.
Yeah.
Like, this guy supports the NSA spying on Americans with no warrants. You're like, it's okay.
It's okay. Good guy.
At least he's not the Democrat.
Yeah.
And it's like, do you care about the issues, or do you just want to say you checked the box of the team that won?
But that's what it seems like it boils down to. And even in the president's acceptance speech last week, he stood in front of the people's house, right, talking to a fourth of the voting age population, saying, we're here and they're not. What?
Yeah,
I sat there in disbelief. I just said, the president of the United States is standing in front of the White House saying, we're here and they're not.
I can't think of a more glaring example of I'd say it's a symptom of the problem, because it's this hyper partisan, like the I think you mentioned earlier, zero-sum game.
Yeah.
You have politicians who would rather exacerbate problems so that they can keep saying they're against them rather than solve them and put them behind them. Like right now, all the protesting and riots could end overnight if Congress passed the Ending Qualified Immunity Act.
Yeah.
People would say, okay, cops are finally going to be accountable for the brutality that they're committing across the country. Good cops won't be affected. It's only going to be the bad cops that are. And if you're standing up and defending bad cops just because you think you support law enforcement, it's like, that's not supporting law enforcement.
No, it's
all
not.
You're doing is building ill will against law enforcement, and the good cops that are out there are going to get lumped in, and you're going to have a negative sentiment towards everyone. Congress could solve this overnight by passing the Ending Qualified Immunity Act that Representative Justin Amash introduced.
Yeah,
it's the first American tripartisan support bill. There was one Republican who signed on.
Wow. Wow.
There was one. You got to give that one credit.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's so crazy. Like, all of this unrest would end overnight.
Yeah.
Just with that passage of that one bill. It's unbelievable.
It's so political.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is so political. And just like I said, the politics gets so far away from the people.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, what are the people? How are we even in this equation? Because like the unrest and the violence that's going on, I wouldn't dream of any of it, right? I don't know anyone who would willingly engage. Most of my friends work, for a living, and that alone would stop them from engaging in criminal activity. But they're just good
think about
people.
This. Think about all the people whose jobs were banned by the government.
Oh,
who are now
absolutely.
Not working.
No, absolutely.
It's so much of this, if you just give it a little bit more scrutiny,
the
government has caused all of this. And I'm not one of those people who just says, just unilaterally, oh, the government's evil, it's all a conspiracy. I'm never going to take that stance. I always take the approach of, the government shouldn't do anything that harms people.
Yeah.
Or specifically harms peaceful people who weren't harming anyone else.
Yeah.
So when you have all these policies that create harm, you ruin jobs, you ruin lives. You've got, well, the president is stoking the flames a little bit. He's saying, we need to come down hard on all this. It's like, coming down hard is why all this is happening.
Yeah.
You're just gonna make it worse.
Yeah.
So there are solutions, and I don't think that staying in power is apparently solving problems isn't how you stay in power.
Yeah.
Saying you're going to solve problems and
pointing
at how bad the economy is how you.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I mean, but I've said in my lifetime, my lifetime period, the rich has gotten richer, the hood has gotten hooder, and the middle has disappeared.
Yeah. It's America used to be really about opportunity and income mobility, and that just goes away the more and more people don't have the freedom to uplift themselves, to empower themselves with education or innovation or starting a small business. There are so many barriers that prevent people who are creative and have that spark and that motivation that just can't get off the ground because there's too many taxes, too many rules or restrictions or licenses that you have to get. That like just think about something that you clearly use, someone who braids hair.
Yeah.
Like, you have to get a license from the government in order to braid hair.
Right.
You have to ask permission.
Yeah.
To braid hair and pay money and do all, and that's such a silly barrier to entry. Whereas someone could just say, I want to do this for a living. I want to open up a shop. I want to maybe travel around, whatever, and provide that service. And the government is in the way, stopping that person from becoming self-sufficient.
Well, we talked about an economy that's independent of the people in a show before. It's a crazy idea because, like you said, the exchange of goods or services for value is economy, right? And that is a people thing, right? So the government being mindful of the economy but not the people makes it kind of crazy. But we're getting to the end of our segment, and I want to just make sure everyone knows where they can find you, to do more research on your campaign, and to just follow you. I'd love for you to come back whenever.
Oh, absolutely. I'd love
whenever
to come back as well.
You have a chance, because we talk the same language, and I think it's beneficial for people to hear that they're not alone. They're not alone in not globbing on to the hyperpartisanship. So
sure, appreciate it. So I'm Elliot Sherman, running for Congress in Texas 2nd District, which if you pull up Google right now and look that up, it is a very gerrymandered kind of hook shape around Houston. It starts up in the Humboldt-Atascocita area, goes across Spring, down 290 through Memorial Park, across Washington, through Montrose, and down almost to NRG Stadium. So that's a crazy shape. Anyway, you can follow me at on Facebook if you just look for Sherman for Congress. It's spelled funny though, so bear with me. It's SCHEIRMAN for Congress. You can find me on Twitter at Vote Sherman, and I'm also on Instagram. And my fiance did make me just encourage me to make a TikTok yesterday, but I have no content on there yesterday. I'm still trying to figure that out.
Okay.
I'm one of the elder millennials here, so I don't quite have that in place yet. And if you care about being able to live your life free, not so long as you're not harming other people, if you want to see marijuana legalized, if you want to see LGBT rights, people treated equally, if you want to see humane immigration, if you want to see the government spending less of your money and taking less of it, I think that I'm a really strong candidate for you to consider. Just don't reward the duopoly, the government created by the Republicans and Democrats, with the corruption that they're committing. Like, if nothing else, give them a protest vote. That's all I ask. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, I have enjoyed every minute of it, and again, come back anytime. Well, you guys, keep on watching. We're going to keep talking about our issues.
Between the ages of 0 and 5, a child's mind is very impressionable. Researchers call it the theta brainwave. This low frequency is the state of consciousness between the conscious and subconscious worlds. In this state, the mind is capable of deep and profound learning, healing, and growth. There is a subconscious loop that's created during these early years. Who you believe you are has been downloaded based on experiences that you have had. A bad experience could create fears and limitations. Do you love who you are? Do you believe in yourself? The reality is that you can't control your childhood. All you can do is interpret it. You can choose to see your good and your value. Try this experiment. Project forward. See yourself at 80 years old. Now you have lived a lifetime. What advice would you have for your younger self? What risks would you have taken? What relationships would you have avoided? Did you celebrate life? Did you allow yourself to feel, to be present? Your 80-year-old self would tell you to not live in fear, to have faith that things will work out, that all you have to do is persist until you succeed. Your 80-year-old self would tell you to stay healthy, to take care of your body. And it would ultimately tell you to share your gifts with the world.
This is former Rocket Robert Reed.
This is Mel Jewell of Athletes United.
And we want to talk to you about our new program and podcast. We're talking about former athletes who are doing a lot of things in the community.
Various athletes in various sports. Swimming, track, soccer, football, baseball, you name it.
Former and current athletes here in the greater Houston area.
All promoting wellness, health. All promoting that which makes us all better.
Of Edge Radio, truth still matters.
The Natural Nation Network is really about taking control of your health physically, spiritually, emotionally, even intellectually, because there's so much out there in misinformation. There's a lot of people now that are suffering from all sorts of diseases that they really wouldn't have to suffer for if they had better information. And that's what we're here to do. Provide information that can save lives.
The mind and the body are totally connected.
Health can be really serious, and sometimes we just have to lighten it up a little bit while we're still providing substantive information.
And my sort of mantra on the salsa dance floor is kind of similar. I tell somebody, if you make a mistake twice, it becomes a move. Okay?
Tune into Natural Nation every Tuesday at 11 a.m.
When people stop talking to each other, society is on the edge. Let's bring them back. Edge Radio, because truth still matters.
And we are back. Welcome back to the Edge Radio Network. You are watching Dearly Disenfranchised with attorney Nicole Gray. I'm Oscar Hines. We are just here wrapping up that interview that was excellent with Elliot Shearman running for Congress.
Yes.
What were some of the points that sort of stayed with you with that conversation?
I think he just talks the language of many, right? Or we were talking about lots of people feel left out of this hyper partisan environment. No, I mean, the extreme right, the extreme left, people are somewhere in the middle wanting to work hard, live freely, support their families and leave a legacy.
Yes.
Without the government's interference.
Yes. The thing, if I had to choose a major pet peeve, and it's something I was just talking to Elliot off camera here, is that Congress and the Senate has essentially created this amazing compensation plan, vacation plan, insurance policies. They have legislated the hell out of themselves into luxury, while the rest of society struggles. And they actually, after someone like a 47-year career, you become a little insulated to the realities of life.
Absolutely. I mean, I look at just our House Majority Leader and our Senate Majority Leader, Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell.
Correct.
Career congressmen.
Yes.
I've said that the human condition hasn't changed much other than some dilapidation of the lower classes, right? But they have been in power the entire time.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, we've got a lot of angst now that we've got such a polarizing figure in the White House that is really bringing a lot of our issues to the forefront. But our manufacturing jobs didn't just leave in the last 3 years. Our racial tensions didn't just come to this boiling point over the last 3 years. These are issues that have been ongoing and deteriorating, like our infrastructure, like our education, right? These things that we have in common that we should want to be tip-top for our standing in the world and for ourselves, they're left to deteriorate because everyone wants to kick the can. That guy didn't do it. That guy didn't do it.
Yeah.
Pick me because that guy didn't do it.
Right. And then as soon as they're in, they run into the gridlock and they become part of the problem rather than the solution.
Yeah. And there was something interesting that our guest said about a protest vote, right? I've heard that term used before, and I don't understand the term so much because our votes are individual, right? So whatever vote you cast, that's your vote. But I understand that a vote not for a major party candidate can seem to be a protest vote, but really it's a corrector, right? Because like we said, I think in our first show we talked about why won't Kanye go sit down somewhere, right?
Sure.
Well, if one third party candidate got 10% of the disenfranchised, the major party candidates are going to talk to that person, right? So the extreme that was presented by this side or that side is going to be metered,
right?
Because they're going to reach for this person who was able to get activate this 10% of the voting age population,
right?
And even if it's just to try to get them to come along with them for next time, so that they can increase their chances of winning in the next election, whatever the end game will be for starting that conversation, they're going to pull them in because of the numbers.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned Mitch McConnell and Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi's district in California is a hot mess.
Oh, what?
The taxes are out of control. The services aren't there. The middle class has been destroyed practically. If you live in California, you're basically paying so much taxes that you can barely survive there.
Yeah.
It's really sad. And you got more homeless and everything else, but yet somehow they are right. Then you've got the Mitch McConnell, who essentially stops every kind of legislation he can that doesn't serve his party. He is the king of hyper-partisanship. He calls himself the Grim Reaper.
He does.
And with his terrible demeanor and the way he looks, he is a Grim Reaper.
Yes.
But he puts a wet blanket on absolutely everything. And I guess what really concerns me is this notion that all the judges, the Supreme Court, all the way down to all these judges.
190 lifers.
Wow. I heard Trump say there would be up to 300 judges appointed by the end of his administration for life.
Yeah. These are Article 3 judges that are lifers, right? Wow. And they are 0 black, right? Mainly young white men with really, and I keep the air quotes with the conservative, because I keep saying conservative what? What was conservative? What, right. Because I'm a fiscal conservative. I'm all about the money, but correct. What y'all conservative?
That's right.
But largely young white conservative males.
That's right.
To fill all of these positions. Yeah. And one of the appointees that stood out for me, and I can't call his name right now, but it was what he said that caught my attention because it's in my wheelhouse. He said voter suppression and disenfranchisement was poppycock. I said, young man, are you serious? Are you serious? Wow. Because we have the proof.
Absolutely.
We have voter ID laws, felony disenfranchisement, redlining. We have the proof.
Well, just now, Elliot just showed me the map.
Yeah.
It looks like a kite and then a string along the kite, and that's a district.
Yeah.
How's that even possible?
I haven't.
That's gerrymandering at the highest levels.
Sure is.
And it's so egregious because if you've got, I have a good friend of mine, he's a conservative, and I talked about gerrymandering. I talked about this idea that all these court judges are being appointed. And he said, well, what's so wrong with that? These are conservatives. They're going to stick to the values of conservatism. That's not a bad thing. I'm like, oh my gosh. If I just look at how much redlining is done, and if I look at how many black people are affected by that redlining, and how their votes are going to be completely squelched for this notion that we're going to get our white, now a minority, to still control stuff.
Yeah, it's this whole notion of doing the wrong thing for the right reason. I have no idea what that means.
Yeah.
I have no idea what that means. It's a crazy notion, but it is something that's presented by hyper-partisan politicians, and it's globbed onto by the constituency for I don't understand it, but that's the justification that lets some people justify vigilantes of either
right
side because they say it was the wrong thing for the right reason.
Yeah. Well, that's all backwards thinking. That's a justification
It's
for
a justification.
potentially hurting someone.
It's a justification.
Yeah.
And that's right. It's a justification for meeting your needs at the expense of another.
Correct. Exactly. Which is sad.
It is sad. But where we're talking about in this area of the disenfranchised and like what we were talking about with the guests is there's not a protest vote, right? The more skin we have in the game, the more people that we get to show up to the polls, the less our government can go and do its own thing. Right? But when you go out, you don't have to vote for anyone in particular that doesn't serve your interests. That's foolhardy. I mean, but when you get out and you place your vote in your interest, it meters things. Mm-hmm. It gives us a little bit of balance because we're not allowing our government to be hijacked by these factions.
That's right.
So call it what you want, protest vote, third party vote. Get out and explore these candidates and just see how you can add weight to the scale, because we have to add more weight back to the people's interests. Otherwise, we'll just continue to see the same things that have happened bipartisanly, right, for decades.
Yeah, exactly. Do you think that, so if a group of people meet with a politician, like the gentleman that was here, and they say, this is what's important to us, and this is what we need you to do, and the politician says, okay, we can do that. Then he meets with the corporation, the corporate head, the CEO that says, hey, I like you. I think that we can work together. There's some things that I need to be passed, some legislation that we need to work, and we can really get behind you and support you. Who does the politician choose if those are diametrically opposed goals?
Is that rhetorical?
Very, yeah.
Because they're going to choose who pays their bills.
Right.
Right? If they're getting contributions to their campaign at $5, an interested voter, and then they've got someone willing to write them a check for $5,000.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it's just money talks.
That's right.
And it is one thing that our guest, and we didn't get to talk about this, he's a proponent of term limits, right? And there were a few people that were running for the Democratic nomination for president that were talking about term limits. And I think those will be really key going forward so that people aren't so enticed by these interests.
I wish.
Well, if you've got, it changes the dynamic, because imagine a company or a corporation coming up and they know that you're only going to be down there for a couple of years. The amount of money they're going to throw your way is going to be less.
Exactly.
Because they know, oh, you're only going to be down there a couple of years anyway, not decades, right?
Right.
I don't have a 40-year partnership.
Exactly.
I don't have a partner throughout the lifespan of my business plan.
That's right.
That's if we remove the incentive for the corporate interest to seek out our politicians, because they know that they're going to be there and they're going to be this constant friend that they can butter.
That's where I get stuck. Yeah. Because everything they're doing is not that. It's the opposite of that.
Yeah.
Like the term limit conversation has been bantered back and forth, but it's not going anywhere.
Right.
But not only that, but they passed just about 4 or 5 years, it wasn't that long ago, where they allowed super PACs to be formed, where they allowed corporate interests to be implemented in ways that previously were not allowed by the rules. So it doesn't seem like we're trending in the right direction here.
Because it's, like I said, that number, 1976. And that's what I said, going back and looking at the numbers, 1976 to now, having only 50% of the voting age population weigh in. The only reason why those corporations, or I won't say only reason, but the reason why they so swiftly globbed onto the Black Lives Matter movement, even though they've got Black athletes and Black consumers and all of that, they got on so fast because of the numbers.
Yes.
Represented in the streets.
That's right.
Right? So our politics, and our guest hit on this a bit, that our hyperpartisan politics benefits from the disenfranchisement, right? And so it continues, and they're happy, they're okay with 50% of the voting age population not voting because they can cater to their corporate and special interests without a bother.
That's right.
Right? But we've got to mobilize in every way. I mean, and people mobilize in different ways in activism, but we've got to mobilize in every way to put our weight on this thing.
Yes.
So I think the reason why they don't change the game is because they're not made to.
That's right. You're right. And we're going to continue going down this slippery slope until there is zero control left.
Yeah.
And that's why we have to activate and have conversations like the one that we're having right now.
Yeah.
We really have to get people that are disenfranchised, that are separate, that don't feel a part of the system, or that they can impact things. And guys, those listening that are here in Texas, you guys have the ability to really, really make a difference, because this is a purple state now.
Yeah, it is.
It can go either way.
Yeah.
And at Edge Radio, we take the position that we just want people involved in the political process.
That's right.
We're not going to dictate go to the left or go to the right, but we're going to say get involved.
Get involved. Yeah.
So that being said, I want you guys listening right now to take a note of this and be sure to become engaged at some level. We're going to have a very special event. It's going to be taking place on September 26th. So that's a month from now. But September 26th is going to be a Saturday at 4 p.m. We are going to be doing a voter registration drive.
Fantastic.
So that's going to be pretty cool. But,
I
I know people want to come out for a little bit more. So we will have some of the top artists in Houston bringing out beautiful paintings. Some of these will be for sale. There'll be spoken word artists. There's going to be jazz singers. There's going to be music. There's going to be food.
Well, fantastic.
And we're going to talk about voting. We're going to get people registered.
Well, that's the old key, because Dearly Disenfranchised is why we're here every morning, Monday morning, 8:30 to 10 a.m. on Edge Radio Network TV. Join us next time.
Yes. We've been talking to the wonderful Miss Nicole Gray. We want to thank you for all the hard work you've been doing and keep us tied into the political conversation. Absolutely. Next up, we are going to be asking this very important question. How you living? With my girl, Robin, and Dr. Kiva. Don't go anywhere. Dr. Odili is coming on. He's going to be talking about some of what's happening here in Houston with the virus, with some of the things that we have to do to protect our health. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to the Edge Radio Network. Share, share, share. We'll be back in just a moment.